It's Tuesday, so you know what that means. I actually am doing the sports Q&A on the day that it is supposed to be done. Hot diggity damn, hot grits. All right, anyways, thanks to you guys that submitted your questions. If you want your questions answered, I'm supposed to do these every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I'll try to be better about doing them that way. Just go to Twitter, tweet your sports questions to @pfspot_Schlegel. Keep in mind, again, I know fantasy football season is here. You can ask fantasy football questions as well as part of your sports questions. Let's get started, though. @Ilias99 asks, do you play IDP fantasy football? Yes, as a matter of fact. That's pretty much the only fantasy football that I do anymore is with individual defensive players. And part of the reason is I hate the narrow format of the standard leagues where maybe you have a quarterback, 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 flex, defense, special teams, and a kicker. I think it leaves too much depth for too many teams, regardless of the size of your league, even up to, like, let's say 12 teams. And really, it's one of those things, you could have a really good team, but 1 or 2 players has a bad week and you lose. I love individual defensive players because, to me, it's more of an evaluation of your overall knowledge of football, not just the offensive side. It makes you pay attention to more aspects of the game for more teams. And those individual defensive players can really help bail you out. If your quarterback has a bad week, but your linebacker gives you 12 tackles and a sack, man, you're sitting there looking at 13, 14 points. You got to feel pretty good about yourself. And that's why I like doing them. And you asked also, would you consider doing an IDP ranking for the different defensive position groups? No. That'd take too much time. Sorry. I thought I was going to do the position-by-position fantasy football rankings. I don't think I'm going to because, in fact, I think I want to keep that information to myself. But no, I wouldn't. It would take way too long. Brian_Kita asks, should the Rams tank the season for Marcus Mariota next draft? No. And the reason I say that is I think they'll be okay with Sean Hill. I don't understand the hard-on and infatuation with Sam Bradford from the Rams organization, some of the sports media, and from certain football fans. What did Sam Bradford ever do that really said, hey, this guy is no doubt about it a franchise NFL quarterback? He never did. The Rams are constructed a certain way. Let's see what Sean Hill can do. No, I wouldn't advocate tanking because I think this is a team that can still go out there, win football games, and be in the mix in the NFC, at least in the wild card race all season long, even with Sean Hill. Because I don't think it's that much of a downgrade, frankly, from Sam Bradford. It's definitely a huge upgrade over the backup they had last year in Kellen Clemens, that's for sure. Alex Shirley 10 asks, how do you have my Titans in last place behind Jacksonville and Houston? Very easy. You got to feel it. You got to believe it. Look. I'm just not feeling the Titans, man. It's just one of them things. I got a vibe about them. And when I go against those vibes, I tend to be wrong. It doesn't mean I'm right every time when I go with my vibe, but I'm going to trust my gut. I don't like a lot about them on the offensive side of the ball. I have serious questions about whether or not they can run the ball effectively. I have some questions about their offensive line. I have some questions, obviously, about their quarterback, Jake Locker. I have some questions about their defense, in particular, their switch to the 3-4 defense and the fact that they just lost their best defensive player, or maybe, depending on your perspective, their second best defensive player in the offseason, Alteron Werner, the corner. I think Jacksonville has improved. I don't think Houston was nearly as bad of a team in terms of talent as their 2-14 record indicates last season. And obviously, I think the Colts are the class of the AFC South, so I think it's very easy to see why I would put the Titans in last. Sorry. And also, is Sam Bradford now considered a bust that he's hurt yet again? Yeah, he's a bust. He was number 1 overall pick. I don't care what the circumstance or situation is, injuries or not. The bottom line is the guy was the number 1 overall pick. He's been in the league 5 years now. He is a bust. Period. Devin Throw asks, should I have drafted Julius Thomas in the 3rd round at the 5th pick, even if there weren't too many good wideouts available? I'm not looking at my fantasy rankings at this point, but did that seem incredibly high to take a Julius Thomas? Not necessarily. Now, I don't know what your scoring settings are in your league. I don't know how many teams there were in the league. I don't know who you took in the first 2 rounds. I don't know what other tight ends were still available. I don't know what other wide receivers were available for you to sit there and say there weren't too many good wideouts available, because I would probably dispute that. I don't know what running backs could have been available, because I think there could have been some really nice running backs available at that point. So it's really hard for me to say. Does it sound like Julius Thomas was a huge reach, though, at that point in time in the 3rd round? Perhaps not. But without knowing more of the details of the specifics, I can't give too specific an answer. At _Keys10, never played fantasy football. Where should I get started? By checking out my fantasy football draft tips series here on YouTube.com. That's a good place to start, especially if you're a beginner. It will give you a good introduction to fantasy football, what it's about, help you in terms of some strategies, things that you should prepare yourself for, things you should be on the lookout for. And then go to Yahoo or ESPN, do some mock drafts, do some research. You still got time. You still got over a week before the NFL season starts. Plenty of time to get into some fantasy football leagues. Do some research. Watch my fantasy football draft tips series, and you'll be ready to go. Jack R517 asks, any tips on how to play the flex position in fantasy? I don't know if there's like one specific one. I would say this, as a general rule, I prefer to play a running back at the flex over a wide receiver, and the simple reason is because a wide receiver, no matter how good the wide receiver, primarily is only going to give you points from one possible avenue, and that is catching the ball, yardage, receiving touchdown. Whereas a running back could potentially, depending on the running back, give you yardage in terms of his carries on the ground, any rushing touchdowns, and also be an asset in the passing game, giving you some receiving yards. If you're in a PPR or half a point per reception league, give you some points for his receptions. If he has a receiving touchdown, it's more likely that you'll get that out of a running back than a wide receiver. So if I'm looking at a player, I want a guy that could potentially score in a multitude of ways, and a wide receiver can tend to be, in tight end as well, can tend to be limited in terms of a flex position. If it's a league with a flex position where that flex position could be a quarterback, then I would want to play the quarterback if I have the right quarterback. Chris is nice asks, will the Rams finally move on from the Sam Bradford experiment? I would say experience, but what have you. They'll probably be in a better position in terms of salary cap situation to let him go after this season. They have no choice. You cannot sit there and do what you've done the past few drafts and sit there and build a nice core nucleus and expect to compete in the NFC West with the Sam Bradford, healthy or not. And especially with him and his failures, his complete and total failure to stay healthy. Bad luck or not, bad situation or not, the bottom line is he can't stay healthy. He hasn't been healthy. And the number one thing a franchise quarterback has to do in order to actually begin to establish that he can be a franchise quarterback is to play all 16 games in a season. It's why I'm so hard on Jay Cutler and the Chicago Bears for giving him that ridiculous contract, because it was ridiculous. And Sam Bradford, I realize you drafted him number 1 overall, but you also got to look at it from Jeff Fisher and Les Snead's standpoint. Why would you continue to sit there and ride it out with a guy from a previously failed regime? Why would you go with somebody else's guy as your guy when that guy has done nothing to establish that he deserves that? It's not like you're walking into a situation and you're inheriting Andrew Luck or Cam Newton or Colin Kaepernick or Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers. You get the point. You're inheriting Sam Bradford. I'm not tying myself to Sam Bradford. Sorry. It's just the way I feel. Jay Gore 492 closes out this Q&A with this question. Do you feel that the amount of flags being thrown in the preseason is over the top? Yeah, I do. And I understand, again, you're trying to emphasize this stuff and you want to make certain points, but the flags are getting ridiculous. It's bogging down games and it's ruining the enjoyment level for some. And it's getting to the point of, can guys do anything without a flag being thrown? To me, the best games are the games where the referees, frankly, aren't that involved. The less you hear the referee talk, the less you hear any of them speak or see them or mention them, the better off the game is for all parties involved. And it's been far too much of that in the preseason where the referee and the flags have become too big of a story, and the NFL needs to do something to step in and say, well, let's pump the brakes just a little bit here. Thanks again to all of you guys that submitted your questions for this Q&A. Keep your fantasy football questions coming along with your other sports-related questions as well. Kind of surprised I didn't get any Kevin Love questions. I thought I was going to get some of those too. But anyways, thanks again. I'll be back Thursday for another sports Q&A. Make sure you check out my fantasy football draft tips series if you still have fantasy football drafts to come. There's a bunch of videos in that series. A couple of those items might really help you out, even if you think you're a really good fantasy football player. Check out my team-by-team preview of the 2014 NFL season. That series is still underway. Got about 6 more teams to get through, and then that'll be all done. And I'll be back again Thursday for another Q&A here on Schleich Daddy TV.